Today, the United States is the richest and most powerful nation in history. But for the first century after Europeans reached the New World, almost no one wanted this land. It was dismissed as a frozen, empty wasteland with nothing of value inside it. After Christopher Columbus accidentally reached the Caribbean in 1492, Spain and Portugal moved to secure the planet. In 1494, they signed the Treaty of Tordesillas, literally drawing a line down the middle of the world map to split the globe between them. But both empires completely ignored the North. All the gold, silver, and dense civilizations they coveted were located in the South, where the Aztecs and Incas had already built treasure-rich empires in modern-day Mexico and Peru. To the early global powers, the territory that would become the United States was nothing more than a collection of forests and swamps. It was deemed worthless and left abandoned. England didn't even attempt a colony for nearly 100 years. Their first effort at Roanoke vanished entirely. The second, at Jamestown, nearly failed due to starvation. It wasn't until 1620 that a group of strict religious refugees, the Pilgrims, arrived in Plymouth to establish a permanent foothold. Over the next century, the population grew into a disjointed mix of religious outcasts, debtors, adventurers, and hundreds of thousands of Africans brought to the shores in chains as slaves. By the mid-1700s, 13 British colonies were crowded along the Atlantic coast. But to their west, the French were quietly claiming everything from the Great Lakes down to New Orleans. They called this massive interior New France. Two European powers were now claiming the same continent. This territorial bottleneck meant a violent collision was only a matter of time. That collision was the 7 Years' War. Britain won, seizing the French territory, but the victory came at a staggering cost. To pay off their massive war debts, the British began taxing the colonies without allowing them any representation in Parliament. On July 4, 1776, the colonies declared their independence. It was a massive statistical improbability. 13 scrappy colonies declaring war on the most powerful empire on Earth. They survived through a combination of a massive, difficult territory, an unwilling population, and French military support, and a general named George Washington who was exceptionally good at keeping his army from being destroyed. But after 5 years of war, the new country nearly collapsed. The 13 colonies had become 13 squabbling mini-countries that couldn't agree on taxes, trade, or borders. To survive, the founders had to rewrite the nation's laws from scratch. In 1787, they drafted the U.S. Constitution, a framework designed to bind these states together into a single functional entity. Even with a new government, the country remained small and broke. Then, French General Napoleon Bonaparte seized power in Europe and took control of the Louisiana Territory, including the port of New Orleans, which controlled the entire American economy of the Mississippi River. Fearing an economic strangulation, President Thomas Jefferson sent diplomats to France. Their mission was simple: try to buy just the city of New Orleans to keep the river open for American farmers. Napoleon, needing immediate cash for a new war with Britain, offered to sell the entire middle of the continent instead. Overnight, the United States doubled in size. The price was $15 million for 828,000 square miles. That works out to roughly 3 cents per acre. It remains the cheapest and largest land deal in human history, instantly transforming America from a coastal strip into a continental power. This expansion was driven by the idea of manifest destiny, the belief that the U.S. was destined to rule from the Atlantic to the Pacific. Settlers pushed west, displacing Native American tribes and eventually involving Mexico to seize more territory. After winning the war with Mexico in 1848, the U.S. acquired California and the Southwest. Just weeks later, gold was discovered in California, triggering a massive rush of people that transformed the region in a matter of months. But this rapid growth hit a fatal wall: slavery. The North had outlawed it, while the South's economy was built on it. Every new territory added to the map caused a bitter fight over which system would control it. In 1860, Abraham Lincoln was elected president. Fearing he would end slavery, 11 Southern states broke off to form the Confederacy, sparking the American Civil War. It was the deadliest war in American history. By 1865, roughly 750,000 Americans died, more than all other American wars combined. The North won, and slavery was abolished. But the country was left traumatized, its president assassinated, and its future uncertain. 2 years after the war, a bizarre offer arrived from the Russian Empire. They wanted to sell the frozen wilderness of Alaska for $7.2 million. Newspapers mocked it as Seward's folly, an expensive mistake. But 30 years later, gold was discovered in Alaska, followed by the realization that it held some of the largest oil and timber reserves in North America. In the decades following the Civil War, the nation's focus was almost entirely internal. It laid thousands of miles of transcontinental rail and built an industrial engine that began outproducing the European powers. By 1898, this rising industrial giant was ready to look outward, declaring war on Spain after a revolt in Cuba captured the American imagination. The victory was swift. Within months, the United States had seized Puerto Rico, Guam, and the Philippines, effectively inheriting the final fragments of the global empire Christopher Columbus had started 4 centuries earlier. To manage this new two-ocean territory, President Theodore Roosevelt backed a rebellion in Panama to secure the rights for a transoceanic canal. When the Panama Canal opened in 1914, the U.S. Navy could move between the Atlantic and Pacific in days rather than months. It was a level of logistical dominance no previous empire had ever achieved. That same year, World War I began in Europe. The country that was once a stream of starving colonies had become a world power. It took 400 years, a war of independence, a series of lucky real estate gambles, and a brutal civil war. But the nation nobody believed in had accidentally become the country that would shape the next 100 years.